you're building a very, very successful coaching business. And I've heard you on a couple of podcasts. You and I have a lot in common, and you do a lot of things way better than I do, certainly. So there are a lot of things that I want to dig into here. But one of the things that really strikes me is how purposeful and intentional you are about the way you've built your business and the boundaries that you have that protect your ability to be the father that you want to, and the family man that you want to be. And I think that's really, really inspiring, and will be very inspiring to our guests today. So I want to dig into some of the things that you have learned, over the past few years since you've been building this coaching business, and what you're doing. Because you're not just taking a page out of the playbook for how to, here's how you create a click funnel. I don't know if you use ClickFunnels specifically, but something like that. This is how you build a funnel. And this is like, just, you've talked about continually building a machine, building a process, just it's one step after another, and you're always getting better. So I'm really excited to dig into that. What made you decide that you wanted to do that? Let's start at the start. What made you decide that you wanted to do something like that in the first place?
Yeah, what a great question, right? Because, specifically, it wasn't like I woke up overnight, like, I'm going to build this machine for this business. It was a realization over time. And one of the things I realized, especially early on, it's like as you go through life, you have transitions and epiphanies and ahas in your life.
Sure.
Growing up, I grew up very, very poor with my parents' restaurant. I saw my parents working their tail off 80 hours a week in a restaurant. I never got to see my parents except when I worked with them. So early on, my aha was, hey, I want to work in a position where I can use my brain and not have to physically always be there, right? To be more efficient with my time.
Mm-hmm.
When I got into sales, that was my vehicle. Hey, you know what? I can generate more income, more money by really mastering sales. And that was really powerful. And then as I started having success in corporate life, it got to the point where, I was running very large teams. I had over 100 plus employees. I was traveling nonstop. I was in a hotel room 100 plus nights a year. I was working easily 80 hours a week, and I was gone. And it was fine when I first kind of started rolling and doing that. And it was cool. Success was cool. Money's cool. All the things seemed really cool at the time. But you realize it's just a means to an end. And you start realizing how important your time is. It's kind of funny. When you have no money, you care about money because you have a lot of time. When you have a lot of money, you have no time.
Yeah.
And I started realizing that early on in my corporate career, I started having this type of success, and it got more obvious as I went up the ladder. And it got to the point when I had my kid, we only had one kid. When we had my kid, and that was like, whoa, cause I think a lot of time when you have your kid or first kid, you're kind of like, whoa, my life just changed. You hear about it in books, you read about, you hear about it in movies. You're like, but does it really happen? It did for me. We had my kiddo, and I realized, wow, in those first 2 weeks, being at home and then going, traveling again every single week, that was hard. That was really hard. Yeah. That was a realization that it was starting to hit me then. And then as I continued my career even longer, I stayed in my corporate life for another 3 more years in that role, I got busier and busier and busier, and I was missing out on things that I didn't like. Like, I'll be gone for a few days. I come back on a Thursday night or Friday, and my kid learned something new.
Yeah.
And that bothered me. That was like, wow. That was like, oh man. And I started really thinking about, like, man, like, you know what? Like, what are things I love about my career and what things I don't like? I love the impact. I love serving others. I love doing all these things. I didn't like how much time it was taking away from what really matters. Family, being my with my wife, my other family, my kiddo, etc. And being able to be 100% present. It became a point where it would suck me out of, being so focused on running that business. So it would suck me out of being present even at home. And that was hard. And I was realizing that I wasn't being the father I want to be. I wasn't being the man I wanted to be. I wasn't being the human I wanted to be. So I realized I would have to do something to really create that life I wanted. And it took me years to get to that point of building that. But when I made that leap, I was crystal clear on a few different things. I wanted to, I say leap into start my business. It was to build a business that allowed me to build the life I wanted, right? And that life would be to be able to do whatever I want, whenever I want, with whoever I want, wherever I want to be at. And that was incredibly important to me. So as a result of that, once I launched the business, every piece has been put towards that. Here's the reality. I know my business right now. If I apply the same level of intensity I did in my corporate life, I could actually have even greater results. But I don't want that. To me, it's like, I want to build that life where I have complete control. I can do whatever I want, whenever I want, within the parameters of the hours I want to work. And that's really important. So you see there's multiple stages to me getting to that aha of, wow, what should I do to build a business? And then once I started getting there, I started learning different strategies, tactics, hacks, if you will, that could help me really maximize my time and be hyper efficient in building a business, but also more importantly, being able to serve at the level I still expect of myself for all my clients as well.
Right.
Yeah. It's I'm sure, we're in the middle of a pandemic right now. So there are a lot of sales professionals who are recognizing how often they were missing those day-to-day moments. And you don't necessarily know until you have, something that sidelines you or keeps you at home and has you focused on family, how critical that can be. It's also that level of self-awareness is so key. And I'm curious, Marcus, as you start looking at how can I be more efficient? How can I ensure that I'm maximizing my time and I'm able to be present with family? What have been the biggest strategies for you that have, I guess, what's helped the most? So when you look at those hacks or tactics that you've applied, what are the things that have impacted your time the most?
Yeah, great question. So when I think about this, I don't think about managing time. I think about managing energy.
Wow.
And
that's our second guest in 3 weeks.
Yeah.
Who's talked about
That's
that. That's
so
great.
key.
Sorry to interrupt you.
Absolutely right. And the way I think about we have 4 energy buckets, okay? Mental, physical, emotional, spiritual buckets. And each person has different size buckets depending on who they are, what really drives them. And for me, I know what my buckets are. So what's really important is, number one, is I'm making sure I refill my buckets daily. Right. And I'm not, some people will say, I'm gonna wait till I have this vacation here, that's when I'm gonna recharge. Well, that could be a month out, 2 months out, a year out. You once you run out of gas, you run out of gas. Okay. You have to get more gas. So I'm a firm believer every single day, you refill the buckets up. Mentally, emotionally, spiritually. So for me, that's why, we were joking earlier, this is early for me, but I've been up at 5 because I have specific buckets that I'm refilling daily. Okay. That's really important, from reading, exercising, meditating, visualizing, etc. So I can be my best version of me. So when I'm jumping into my work for the day, I'm going in hyper focused. That's the first hack. Number one, I'm filling the energy bucket so I can go in and I have energy to work. It's really important. If I don't have energy to put the work in, it doesn't really matter. Like if I feel crappy, I feel crappy. So I realized years ago, we were talking about this earlier. I cut out drinking, and I still drink periodically, but it's not as often. But it's on weekends. But I cut out drinking during the week because I wanted to make sure when I woke up, I'm at optimal peak performance. Yeah. Right. And that means clear head, clear mind, etc. This is why I eat super clean. There's specific things I do. It's a little bit of biohacking. I'm very much into that because I need to show up and maximize my time. Because we only have 24 hours in a day. So for the time I'm choosing to put work in, I want to make sure I'm hyper-focused. That's the first thing. The second thing that I do also as well, it's really important, is I'm also crystal clear on exactly what I'm going to do for the day and for the week. So let me kind of back up for a second, because what you plan to do for the week or the month, the quarter, breaks down to your daily habits, right? Because what you repeatedly do turns into your end results. So one of the things I do, this is really helpful for me. Early on, the issue I ran into was I would go day by day each day would turn to it would blend into the other. Then a week's blend into another. Before I knew it, the quarter is over, the year is over. I'm like, what just happened?
Right.
And I would hit some goals and miss others. And I realized I wasn't being present enough to really think about what my schedule was looking like. So what I started doing is every single Friday, I built it an hour I call my protected hour. It doesn't usually take a full hour, but at least takes at least 30 minutes. And I sit down and I'll reflect on the week. Okay. I'll reflect on the week, what went really well, what could go better. That's really important. So I block it out so nothing else can be booked during that time. And then I take some notes down. I reflect on the week, what could be better, okay? If I made any changes to any parts of my process or whatever, what were the results? Is it good? Keep doing it, or should I trash it? Whatever. And then I look at my upcoming week. Is what's on my calendar, are the things I'm showing up for, are they going to help me with my overall goals and my why? Or am I just meeting to meet? So typically, if someone just DMs and say, hey, they want to meet, I very rarely say, yeah, what's up? Let's go do it. Because most of the time, it's a waste of my time. It really is. It's like they're trying to get stuff out of me. But here's the reality. When you say yes to something else, you're saying no to something else.
Yep.
Mm-hmm.
So I protect my time. I protect my time, but I look ahead, make sure my week is right, and then I start planning out what are a couple big rocks I want to accomplish this upcoming week. That if the whole week just went to hell, what exactly would I have done that would be like, okay, cool. I feel really good about that. Right. So
viable success.
100%. So it's planned out. So only couple of things. Okay. And then I look at my head of my upcoming week, and I put out time blocks for things that I know I need to get some stuff done. That's vitally important. Now that also means though, each day before I start my day, the day is already planned out.
Yeah. So
I know what I'm going to be doing. All right. It's really important. So every day before I walk in, I already know, okay, so I don't need to think. Remove all decision making. So it's not like, after this interview with Jeff, what should I go do? No, I know. I'm going to go get my kiddo ready. Boom. After that, I have a strategy call. And then after that, I have a couple other strategy calls. But then after that, I have some specific blocks from building on a few new website pages. It's all set. I'm like, I need to get these things done, and they all drive towards bigger things. Yeah. So that's really, really important. So it's all broken down. It's very tactical. But here's another third big hack, or a hack rule. A third simple thing to do. At the end of each day, I have trackers and things I review daily to make sure I'm on par with where I'm targeting. Inputs, outputs. Okay, for the business. So this is really important because this helps remove emotion from decision making.
Yeah.
Because sometimes you're like, oh man, this day was terrible. If you're a sales professional, you're like, oh, today was terrible. But then you look back, actually, hold on. I had 3 really good sales calls. Yeah, they didn't close, but I have 3 really strong follow-ups now, as I said, because of that. And they're bringing other decision makers and we're getting other people involved. And I got a new inbound lead that I booked an appointment with. You know what? Actually, it's a pretty productive day. Yeah. It's a good day.
Yeah.
So this is forcing you to look at some of the metrics for your business or your sales life to say, you know what, was it really good? And then from there, you can take other actions to either improve that metric or to say, good job, keep on going. So there's a couple of things that I do right now that's very powerful and helps me stay focused, get my stuff done, and just maximize my time when I'm on, being worked at, if you will.
Yeah.
Focus on a process, you get results. Focus on results, you get frustrated.
Yeah.
That's it.
Yeah.
Right.
Ahead,
Well,
Kristen.
and I think too, that reflection process helps you develop a measured response and not just react. And that's really that whole sense of like, oh, what a crappy day. That's a reaction, not a measured response. So, I love the idea of the reflections. So have you always been like this, Marcus? Have you always been very driven, organized, structured, or was this something you learned along the way?
No, so I wasn't. So, I mean,
because I can hear a couple of the salespeople that I work with going, oh yeah, right up until that one call that derails everything.
Yeah. So, I think this will probably make you laugh a little bit. So growing up, I didn't start speaking until I was 4 years old. I actually had a speech impediment for years, took speech therapy classes. In fact, my parents actually thought I was a special needs child growing up when I was younger. So they were very concerned because I developed much slower than everybody else. So growing up, I was actually very, very insecure, did not have this type of confidence in these type of things. The drive at the time when I was little, it was driven from a place of fear mostly. Okay. Mostly because we grew up so poor and my parents were, immigrants, and I was very worried we'd be homeless. So that drive for success was purely because I feared failure. I feared being homeless. I feared not having money. I feared lack of security. I feared lack of stability. So that's where it initially came from. And as I started progressing in life and started having a little bit of success in life, and I remember my first outside sales job. And, and for most part, when you're 20, 21, you think you're freaking invincible. You think you're the best. You're God's gift to everyone, right? That's what you kind of think. And I was no different than that. And especially since I had done an internship and I had some pretty good success. So I figured to myself, hey, this outside B2B hunting job should be really easy. Like, I've always worked hard. They told me to work hard and I'll be great. I'm a hard worker. I know that. Mm-hmm. So a lot of confidence in myself that I was a hard worker because I was used to working 70, 80 hours a week, no problem. I was like, corporate life and I only work for 60 hours, easy. Okay, whatever. So I start, and I remember my very first day, I was given a manual written by people who'd never done sales before. And my boss said, go out there. I want you to go knock on doors, like physically knock on doors. So I remember, I said, okay, cool. How many doors should I knock on? He said, go get 30 business cards and you'll probably close at least one deal. I'm like, great. I went and knocked over 60 doors that day, closed 0 deals, booked 0 appointments. And I thought I was going to die. I was like, oh man, like that doesn't make any sense. Okay, you know what? I'm going to work really hard. And seeds of doubt started getting planted in my head. Every no I got that day planted doubt in my head. Okay. And then again, next day, did it again. And it went that way for a while, for literally weeks. I was literally making hundreds, if not like thousands of calls and knocking like literally hundreds of doors, sending hundreds of emails, and literally no response. And I was literally mentally breaking down. I was like, at this point, I'm like, oh my God, like I'm totally going to fail this. My parents are right. I should have been a doctor. I should have been a lawyer. I didn't do any of those things. I want to freaking sale. I'm about to get fired now. I'm like, this is the worst. And during this whole journey, though, I was starting to read books and trying to learn how can I improve. I was reading all these old school sales books, Zig Ziglar, Brian Tracy, you know what's up. So I'm just trying to figure out the game. Can't figure it out. That's when I came across Tony Robbins. I came across Tony Robbins, Awaken the Giant Within. And in that book, and then I started reading other books of his. And I started becoming obsessed about his personal development. And I realized, I'm like, he's on to something here. You know, it sounds super cheesy, the morning routine stuff he does. I'm like, it sounds really cheesy, but he's pretty successful. So why wouldn't I try? And that was the start of trying to build, learning how to reframe how I think. And I remember, like, I would have a bad cold call, and I realized I was asking myself really negative questions. Why is this person so mean? What is wrong with me? Why is my boss helping me? Why is my boss training me? Why is the economy back to this last recession? What is wrong with everyone? Why is this so hard? Mm-hmm. And reading the Tony Robbins books, as cheesy may sound, I realized, wow, I'm asking myself a lot of negative, disempowering questions. Mm-hmm. And that's creating negative feelings. What if I ask better questions to get a better answer? Because that's what Tony said. So I started asking myself, okay, what could I learn from this? What could I do differently to get a better result? What could I do for the future to get an even greater result? What could I do on the front end to minimize the chances of this happening? So now I'm asking more empowering questions. And that was the first beginning of realizing I could change my state. So I literally remember taking some of those questions. I typed it on a piece of paper. I printed it out. I taped it to my visor, my 2001 Honda Accord in the visor. And after a bad cold call, I whipped that bad boy out. I'd read it out loud. Mm-hmm. And I forced myself to answer those questions. And after I would answer, I started feeling better. Then I started adding affirmations. And then I realized at that point, if I could train these new habits every single time, that every time an emotional situation happened to me, instead of acting emotionally, to force myself to pause, to do something different, to change my state, to change my physiological self, to do something different, like ask a better question, I could change how I felt about the situation. If I could change how I felt about the situation, I could have a better result. And allow me to be more controlled after each call. Bad call, no problem. On the next one.
Right.
I just learned. And that became a habit I developed over time. And as I developed these habits, I started habit stacking over time. Habit stacking. So this way, I realized, you know what? If I could wake up and put myself in a peak performing state before I tackle my work, then I can show up and serve at a greater level. So that's where it all kind of started, right? And over time, over years and years, I started adding more and more habits, and I started learning better ways to control. Is it perfect? No, of course not. Some days are the absolute worst. Okay. Yes, I have down days too, but it's learning how to bounce back from it, reframe your mind, and say, you know what? On to the next one. Let's keep on going. And it's a very powerful way to control your results and control how you react to any situation.
What's interesting there is how mindful you have to be of that, and how honest you have to be with yourself.
Yes.
And to kind of put yourself in the situation where you have to ask yourself, does this serve me right now? Is the way I'm feeling right now, does it serve me? And you know what? Sometimes you want to say, damn it, I don't care if it serves me. I want to feel this way. That's
Right.
just the way it is. And you know what? I think it's important that you give yourself permission to feel any way you need to. You give yourself the grace, to use Christy's word, one of my favorite words, to give yourself the grace to not be acting maybe the way you
Mm-hmm.
want to all the time, or you feel proud of all the time, but you've
Yes.
got to limit that to a certain point in time, or a certain amount of time rather. And then you got to get back on the bus, right? I mean, it's
That's
like,
it.
I remember reading this, Tiger Woods, his dad said, you get 10 steps. You hit a bad shot, you get 10 steps. You're
Mm-hmm.
walking to your next shot. On the 10th, on the 11th step, it's time to start thinking about the next shot
That's
and
it.
get out of the last one. You got to have a short memory. So you make this look easy, Marcus. When did it become easy for you?
It's I wouldn't say it's ever easy. I think you just
No?
get better over time, right? You just get better over time. You start realizing, you know, y- everything around your life is like your outer world is a reflection of your inner world.
Yeah.
And if you can learn how to constantly self-improve and improve yourself and better yourself, then do it. And the key is to learn to become intentional is an ongoing practice. Like I'm still
Yeah.
always working on it. I'm like, for me, I didn't even realize, who I become until probably 10 years after I started in sales, because you start growing. When you're growing, you don't realize, it's kind of like, my toddler's 4 now, but like, since I'm with all the time, I don't know how much he's grown over like 3 months or a year. Like, oh, wow, you actually grew quite a bit, like it's crazy. You watch a video, wow, you speak so much better. And for me, it was like 10 years of that. And that aha was really about 2015 or 16 at that time, because people kept saying they didn't realize how, they're like, hey, Marcus, how did you get promoted 10 times in 10 years? You were for 2 Fortune 500. How did you even do that? Like, how do you crush quota every year? How do you always win? I'm like, I don't know. I just work hard, right? You think that, like, I
Right.
just to work hard. But then when you get asked questions like that, it forces you to pause, like, how did I do that? like,
Yeah.
Like, did I get lucky? Maybe I got lucky. Maybe it was just a market. Who knows, right? But then you have to really take time to have pause and really start to seek yourself. But on top of that, I'm a firm believer, the more you continue to self-develop, I know you're a big book guy as well, but the more you continue to self-develop in not just sales, but all aspects of your life, the more you learn, the more you realize you don't know anything.
Yeah.
And that's something that's been very powerful for me to realize over time, is like, the more I learn, I'm like, wow, I really had no idea about this. And you talk to somebody else, kind of like, I was like, I'm pretty good at sales. Then I'm like, you know what? I want you to learn my internet marketing. I knew nothing after when I started. I'm like, wow, this is a whole new world for me.
Yeah.
This is just a crazy, like I'm used to the cold call, the running the sales call, the disco, the closing, the direct sell. I'm like, to sell someone virtually online is a different game. And that took me time to learn how to do that as well. But that's really important, is just the more you learn, the more you realize you don't know. But to have that mindset of, hey, I can always learn. And I have found, by realizing that and putting my ego aside has been incredibly powerful. Early on, I had quite a bit of an ego, but, I've learned over time to kind of put the ego down. It pops up every now and then, but you can go put it down. But I find those who are most successful are very good at pushing the ego aside. Very good. I'll give you an example, right? So I have this one guy. He had reached out to me about a year ago. One of his questions was like, oh, what could you really teach me? He definitely had an ego. And I was like, okay. So we started kind of diving a little bit deeper, right? He's been in sales for like 15, 20 years, right? I knew I could help this guy, but I didn't want him as a client. I just told him no.
Right.
And the reason I told him no is because he had an ego, right? Because he's like, oh, I don't think you teach me anything. I'm like, well, it's probably not a good fit then. Like, let's be real. Like, if you walk and already believe in that, there's no way you can get better.
Why are we even having this conversation?
Yeah, right. Why did you even reach out if that's the case?
That's exactly right. That's exactly right. So, to become a better version of yourself, to put yourself to become more present, the key is number one, constantly self-develop. Number two, I would say also surround yourself with people that have a similar mindset. It's so important. Because if you're around people that are growth-minded, they're always learning and becoming better, it's going to help you. And then number three, invest in mentors. Like, I find everyone wants a free mentor, but like, the ones you pay the most is what you get the most out of. Like, I paid $13,000 2 weeks ago for my new mentor for this year, right? It's going to be one of probably 3 I'm going to get. And the reason I share that is because I know they're playing the game much higher level than I am. I'm like, they're going to teach me a lot of things, little things that I just don't know about. It's going to make me a better version of me. And it's so powerful when you start thinking this way. It's, like, I'm going to go out there to get knowledge. And there's 2 ways. Either there's the freemium price of time, or I'd use money. and I buy back my time.
Yeah.
And I care more about my time than my money.
It's interesting. You said buy back your time. I'm going to think about that one for a while.
Mm-hmm.
Mm-hmm.
Time is infinitely more valuable than money.
Oh, for sure.
Yeah. Very interesting. So, Marcus, we ask every guest that comes on this show, what is your why?
Yeah. What a great question. It took me years to figure this out. I think for some people, they never figure it out. What's interesting is I figured out my why. It all came about really around the same time frame, about 2015, 2016, around the same time. This is when I started making that transition to how can I build a better life? And that's where I am today because of that, right? So my why is very important to me. And I break it down to really, I realized my why was really three big things. Okay. Number one, to leave a legacy. Like I think to myself, if I died tomorrow, like what do I want to be known for? I want to be known for the legacy I leave behind. Okay. That could be my business, my love for my family, or whatever it's going to be. Okay. Number two, influence. And I don't mean like a quote unquote influencer. That's cheesy to me. I'm talking about like, did I positively influence each person I interacted with? Okay. Like did I hopefully influence in a good way? It doesn't have to be sales. It could be anything. Right. Maybe it's being more positive. Maybe it's being more happy. Maybe it's just looking at life a little bit differently. Right. Like my goal is to positively influence them. And it's whether or not they are paying money. To me, the money is irrelevant. It's like if I put up a piece of content and it really speaks to that sales professional who is having a tough day and that gatekeeper was just a jerk to them. And they say, you know what? Okay, I read that piece. I'm gonna do that tip now. It's really gonna help me. Boom. I love it. That's all that matters to me. Right? So influence, right? Then the last one is love. And what I mean by love and care to me is the same thing. So whatever I do, I show tons of love and care in whatever I do. That's why I do my best to be very intentional. Am I perfect? No. But that means even when we talk about like LinkedIn stuff, it's like being very intentional and doing it with love and care, right? It's not arbitrary. I don't just throw a post up. I don't just do this. I do it because I love and care, right? Like I want to help people. I want to help my family. I want to help myself out. So I do things very intentionally. So if I was to pass away right now, if people could say, you know what, if I could describe Mark's 3 words, it'd be legacy, influence, and love, then I did my job.
Awesome. That's really, really powerful. How can people learn more about you? Where do they go to find you?
Yeah, great question. So super easy. People can head over to literally sixfiguresalesacademy.com. It's my homepage, sixfiguresalesacademy.com. Free resources on there. You can reach out to me on there as well.
Awesome. Marcus, thanks for joining us. Christy, I think it's really interesting. And this happens a lot on this show. We took notes. We decided before we started,
right.
we
were going to talk about LinkedIn tactics. We'll have to have you back on, Marcus.
Yeah. Sounds good. We'll do part 2. Yeah.
Awesome. Christy, Marcus Chan knows his why.
He sure does. And when you know your why, your hows and your whats get much better. Marcus, very nice to meet you. Thank you for joining us. Good to see you as always, Jeff. Thanks for listening, everyone. We'll talk to you soon.